so damn tired of being lied to. I don't think I can deny it anymore. You can stick to your story if you think it flies, but I'm not gonna buy it anymore.
Hello, and thank you for listening to the 129th episode of Congressional Dish. I'm your host, Jennifer Briney, and I'm coming at you today from my mommy's office somewhere in Anaheim, I think. I actually don't know what city I'm in. But yeah, I couldn't record at her house because my sister's idiot dog barks at nothing just about all the time. So I'm in her office, and that's why if the sound sounds a little different, that is the reason, because I am not home for the next few weeks. But today's episode is about an impeachment that's happening in Congress right now, and I'm pretty sure that very few people are aware that this is happening. The person that our Congress has started the process of impeaching is the IRS Commissioner. His name is John Koskinen. And the reason for impeaching him goes back to that IRS Targeting Scandal, the investigation into which has been going on now for over 5 years. Now, I've talked about this a few times in the last few years, but now the investigation into that scandal is done. And so we know what happened. And more importantly, we know what didn't happen. And yet the IRS witch hunt continues. Today, I'm going to fill you in on what the hell I'm talking about. And by the end of this episode, you will understand why all of these IRS investigations are really motivated by a selfish desire by those in Congress to keep secret money flowing into their own campaigns. But before I get into the episode, I would like to remind you that Congressional Dish is listener supported, which means that you're not going to hear any advertisements throughout the course of this podcast. And if you support that, please go to the support page on congressionaldish.com and contribute whatever you think is fair for the research and information and entertainment and whatever else you are getting from this podcast episode. Again, please go to the support page on congressionaldish.com. So the IRS. The IRS stands for the Internal Revenue Service, and their job is simply to collect our taxes. And, getting people to hand over their money is already a difficult job, but it's gotten even more difficult in these last 6 years due to the decisions made by Congress. This following clip is the IRS Commissioner John Koskinen. He was testifying to Congress in October 2015 about the situation at the IRS.
Since 2010, the budget has been cut by over $1 billion. At the same time, we have 6 or 7 million more taxpayers. We've been given unfunded mandates, as we call them, the Affordable Care Act, the Foreign Account Tax Compliance Act. Last year, shortly after our budget was cut as the only major agency with a budget cut, we were asked to implement the ABLE Act and the Professional Employees Act. Since then, we've been asked to implement the Health Coverage Tax Credit Program, again with no additional funding. The net impact is we get funded and we spend money on enforcement, on taxpayer service, on information technology, including cyber protection and identity theft, and general operations and maintenance. As our budget has been cut over 5 years every year, the money has to come from somewhere. So on taxpayer services, we had an abysmal level of service last year. In terms of enforcement, the numbers show that we are losing over $4 billion a year in collections compared to what we used to collect because we have 3,000 fewer revenue agents. Those revenue agents collect over $1 million a year. So we are actually, to save $1 billion in funding, we're losing over $4 billion a year in tax revenue collection. So it's costing the government 4 times the amount of savings in the budget cuts.
So the IRS is doing a bigger job with much less funding, and one of the consequences of having their budget cut like that is that the IRS is not able to hire all of the people that they need for tax collection and for tax-related law enforcement. Now, one of the jobs that the IRS has, but which is underfunded and understaffed, is the job of determining which organizations are qualified for tax-exempt status. There are different categories for tax-exempt status, each one with their own set of rules. For example, charities are eligible for tax-exempt status under Section 501c3 of the IRS Code. Political organizations are also eligible for tax-exempt status under Section 527. There's also a category for tax-exempt status for organizations promoting social welfare programs. That's under Section 501c4. The IRS targeting scandal had to do with those organizations, the ones that were claiming to be social welfare organizations and trying to get tax-exempt status under Section 501c4. You see, like I said before, there is a category for political organizations to be tax-exempt. That's Section 527. But political organizations that exist to influence our votes have to disclose their donors. Social welfare organizations do not have to disclose their donors. And so one of the jobs of the tax law enforcement officers at the IRS is to determine if a group claiming to be a 501c4 is really promoting the social welfare, or if that group is actually a political group pretending to be for social welfare in order to hide their donors. And that job became much more difficult in 1959 when a law enforcement decision was made by the IRS. The IRS changed one word in the statute, and that had huge repercussions. This is Senator Bill Nelson of Florida.
A lot of this discussion about whether or not there was intimidation could be obviated if we would just go back on the 501c4s and administer them what the original statute said, which is civic leagues or organizations not organized for profit, but operated exclusively for the promotion of social welfare. Along in 1959 came a regulation to implement that statute, but they changed the word exclusively to primarily. So the regulation said an organization is operated exclusively for the promotion of social welfare if it is primarily engaged in promoting some way the social welfare. And so all of this flap that we're going through is unnecessary if the IRS would follow the statute that these social welfare organizations, 501c4s, would be exclusively for social welfare. But, of course, it's interpreted differently, and that's why we have the chaos that we have today in our campaign finance system, where all of this, and it is now termed dark money, comes in to influence elections. Dark because it does not have to be reported who is giving the money.
So let me give you an example of how this 501c4 funneling of secret money thing works in real life. So in the last episode, we learned that Puerto Rico is in the middle of a huge debt crisis, and that hedge funds in particular bought a lot of Puerto Rican bonds. Bonds are basically IOUs. You know, Puerto Rico didn't have the money to pay for their basic services, so they went to hedge funds, said, "Can we borrow money from you?" The hedge fund said, "Sure, but we want 20% interest in return." And so hedge funds have a bunch of these bonds and they want their 20%. And so they're trying to prevent Puerto Rico from being able to declare bankruptcy so that, you know, they can renegotiate the deals they made with the hedge funds. We also learned that one of the ways that this idea is being sold to the public, the idea that the bondholders, the hedge funds, should be paid before Puerto Rico's basic government services, was that the bondholders, the hedge funds, were being referred to as retirees, making regular people think that if Puerto Rico had access to bankruptcy laws, everyone's 401ks would take a big hit, giving regular Americans a self-serving reason to side with the banks instead of siding with our fellow U.S. citizens in Puerto Rico, who are literally going to hospitals with no electricity. Here's Representative Mick Mulvaney of South Carolina in the middle of an argument against allowing Puerto Rico to renegotiate their debt payments to the banks using bankruptcy laws.
And you use the word banks, I use the word retirees, but when the retirees in my district invested in these bonds, they did so under a certain understanding.
So banks are retirees, retirees are banks. Finkel is Einhorn, Einhorn is Finkel. Now, it's not a natural thing to equate banks as retirees like this. And so to get the public to think like Mick Mulvaney, according to the New York Times, there was a group of secret donors that hired a lobbying firm called the DCI Group, who then recruited a 501c4 called the 60 Plus Association, 60 Plus as in retirees, to create a fake grassroots campaign against Puerto Rico having access to bankruptcy. Now, according to the tax returns submitted by the 60 Plus Association, most of their money comes from just a few large anonymous donors. Anonymous because as a 501c4, the 60 Plus Association's donors are allowed to remain secret. Now, by connecting some dots, the New York Times is guessing that there is a good chance that these donors are affiliated with the hedge fund Blue Mountain Capital, which owns a crapload of Puerto Rican bonds and is a client of DCI Group, which is the lobbying firm that got the 60 Plus Association to launch their fake grassroots campaign. But here's the thing. No one can be sure that it's actually Blue Mountain Capital. And the significance of this is that if we knew for sure that the hedge funds were paying for the 60 Plus Association's campaign, we could judge its legitimacy quite easily. As it is now, though, with secret donors, the campaign seems legit to the majority of people who don't try to look behind the curtain. So that's why so many groups want to be officially classified as 501c4s. It's all about hiding where vote influencing money is coming from. Now, the IRS scandal had to do with the IRS's investigations into an increasing number of groups that are claiming to be social welfare 501c4s, but appear to be political. According to the Center for Responsive Politics, 501c4 spending in 2006 was only $5.2 million. By 2012, they were spending over $300 million. That's a huge increase. And as you'll see in a minute, the IRS was right to investigate these groups because some of them were so clearly political, it can't even be argued that they weren't. Now, it is important to note that groups claiming to be social welfare organizations don't actually need to be approved by the IRS to claim 501c4 status. This is IRS Commissioner John Koskinen.
You can set up a C4 organization and go into operation without the approval of the IRS. So that anyone who wants to set up tomorrow morning or wanted to over the last several years to become a C4 would do that on their own without our approval. Part of the reason they need or seek our approval is because the rules are complicated in terms of what the facts and circumstances are, and they want to be able to have us review that in terms of facts and circumstances, which is why I think if we could clarify and not rely on, quote, facts and circumstances, it would be much easier for those interested in becoming C4 organizations to set up and operate with a set of confidence that the rules are clear and that nobody's going to second guess them.
So even though the groups don't need the official blessing of the IRS to claim 501c4 status, because the rules are so unclear and confusing, these groups want the status to be official so that they can't be denied after the fact and forced to disclose their donors. Once they're officially a 501c4 with a seal of approval from the IRS, their donors are secret. Done. So that brings me to the scandal. So let's set the scene. It's 2010, the year the Tea Party crushed the midterm election and gave the Republican Party control over the House of Representatives. During the months leading up to the election, Tea Party rallies were popping up everywhere, seemingly grassroots, but actually funded by 501c4s like FreedomWorks. That year, there was a huge increase in the number of applications the IRS had to evaluate for 501c4 status. Between 2010 and 2012, the number of applications more than doubled from about 1,500 to over 3,400. At the time, the woman in charge of the division that evaluates 501c4 applications was a woman named Lois Lerner. In August of 2010, under Lerner's supervision, the IRS issued a be on the lookout list for reviewing applications, first looking for Tea Party groups and then expanding. They looked for words in the group's names such as Tea Party or Patriots or 912, because at the time, Glenn Beck was leading the 912 movement, which was a pretty clear sign that the group may be political. And these lists of these words were used until at least June 12th of 2013. Now, keep in mind, this was started in 2010 when the Tea Party groups were popping up everywhere. Most of the new groups filing as 501c4s were conservative groups, and conservative group applications were scrutinized more than liberal ones. There were more of them, and that makes sense to me. As does the strategy of looking for political terms in a group's name to see if whether or not that group is political. While Lois Lerner and the IRS commissioner at the time eventually said that this strategy was inappropriate, as a taxpayer that doesn't want all of this secret money screwing with our democracy, the strategy still makes sense to me. My bias here is that I still don't think they did anything wrong. But my opinion doesn't count for shit. What does matter is that according to the investigation conducted by the Department of the Treasury, for the 296 applications that were submitted by the end of 2012, not a single one had been denied. They were all approved. However, some of the applications did have to wait a long time. Some of them had to wait well over 3 years. But here's the thing. Like I said before, these organizations don't even have to apply for 501c4 status. They can claim it and get it. So it's not like anyone was even denied any benefits due to those delays. But despite the fact that no groups were denied, a certain segment of Congress and the media blew this up into scandal status, claiming that the groups were evaluated more closely by the IRS, not because they were clearly political groups trying to hide their donors using 501c4 status, but because they were conservative. They were claiming like the IRS was trying to help liberal candidates somehow by targeting and denying conservative applications, even though that didn't actually happen. Here's Bob Goodlatte. He is from Virginia, and he is the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee.
This IRS targeting scandal was nothing short of shocking. It was a political plan to silence the voices of groups representing millions of Americans. Conservative groups across the nation were impacted by this targeting, resulting in lengthy paperwork requirements, overly burdensome information requests, and long, unwarranted delays in their applications.
So conservative groups had to do paperwork, were asked questions, and had to wait a while for their applications to be approved. Despite all of the problems in this country, from an ongoing illegal war in Syria to an executive branch that is collecting and storing all of our digital data to an intelligence community that tortured people. For the last 6 years, has Congress been investigating any of that? No. It's this so-called problem that has been the focus of our Congress, one of the most powerful investigative bodies in the world. Now, to get an idea of who benefits from this, let's take a look at one group that was claiming to have been unfairly targeted. The group is called Crossroads GPS. This group was started by Karl Rove, old turd blossom himself. Karl Rove, for those of you who have been living under a rock and don't know this already, Karl Rove was the political director of the George W. Bush administration. So that right there is a pretty good indication that the group might be political. Karl Rove's Crossroads GPS applied for tax-exempt status as a 501c4 in June 2010, right in the middle of the Tea Party wave. At the time, Carl Forti, Crossroads GPS's political director, said, quote, "Disclosure was very important to us, which is why the super PAC was created. But some donors didn't want to be disclosed, and therefore the C4 was created," unquote. They didn't even try to hide their motivation. Anyway, Crossroads GPS's application sat for 2 years. It was one of those that suffered the brutality of an application delay. And in February 2012, when the IRS actually got around to starting their evaluation, they asked Crossroads GPS for additional information about their funding and activities. A year and a half later, in September of 2013, the IRS said to Crossroads GPS that IRS had, quote, "determined that you are not operated exclusively for the promotion of social welfare," unquote. The agency pointed out that all but one of Crossroads GPS's television ads ran within an 11-week pre-election window in 2010 and were focused on criticizing candidates. The IRS also determined that only 2% of Crossroads GPS's 2010 spending was for social welfare. 2%. Crossroads GPS was also funding other political organizations because, you see, these groups are able to give money to other organizations, and that spending, even if given to political groups, isn't counted as political spending. Crossroads GPS was started by Karl Rove, one of the most famous political strategists in the country, and it spent only 2% of its money on social welfare activities. If there was ever a clearer case for a denial than this, I can't imagine what it would be. And so that was September of 2013. And predictably, Crossroads GPS challenged the denial, claiming that the qualifications were unclear and subjective. Fast forward 2 years later, after years of being accused of unfairly targeting conservative groups by Congress, the IRS reversed their decision and approved Crossroads GPS's application, allowing it to shield its donors with the IRS's blessing. Crossroads GPS benefited from the fact that the qualifications were unclear and subjective. Ultimately, it was that argument that got them their approval. They benefited from the statute that said that social welfare organizations only had to be primarily for social welfare, and the infinite amount of wiggle room the word primarily gives to an even semi-competent lawyer. The congressmen who benefit from the secret money being funneled through clearly political organizations that are being given 501c4 status. Those congressmen want to keep the qualifications unclear and subjective. After all, it's the politicians themselves who benefit from this secret money. To these congressmen, it's the IRS investigations into the political groups, regardless of the fact that almost all the applications have been approved. It's the investigations themselves that are the scandal. To these congressmen, the IRS examining groups based on political words in their names is a violation of their right to free speech.
The First Amendment rights of citizens were trampled upon.
The IRS had improperly treated American citizens who were doing nothing more than seeking to exercise their First Amendment rights.
The underlying premise that they targeted conservatives suppressed their First Amendment rights? Absolutely.
Their failings leave the American people in the dark about how their First Amendment rights were trampled upon.
Well, it's been 6 years now. There have been a lot of investigations. There were investigations done by the Inspector General of the IRS. There is an investigation done by the Senate Finance Committee, which is controlled by Republicans, by the way. There is an investigation that was done by the Treasury Department and an investigation completed by the Department of Justice. And this is the question that these investigations looked into. This is Representative Trent Franks of Arizona.
While we sometimes talk around the edges here, this is a very big issue. Did the government, did the Obama administration use their powers, police powers, their powers, the IRS, the powers to intimidate people because they disagreed with them politically? If they did, that is profound.
Well, it turns out they didn't. Here's Representative Sheila Jackson Lee of Texas reading a letter from the Department of Justice summarizing the results of their investigation. And I think this summarizes what everybody found quite nicely.
There were $20 million spent, 160,000 hours of staff work. We conducted more than 100 witness interviews, that was by the IRS, collected more than 1 million pages of IRS documents, analyzed almost 500 tax exemption applications, examined the role and potential culpability of scores of IRS employees, and considered the applicability of civil rights tax administration obstruction statutes. Our investigation uncovered substantial evidence of mismanagement, poor judgment, and institutional inertia, leading to the belief by many tax-exempt applicants that the IRS targeted them based on their political viewpoints, but poor management is not a crime. We found no evidence that any IRS official acted based on political, discriminatory, corrupt, or other inappropriate motives that would support a criminal prosecution. We also found no evidence that any official involved in the handling of the tax-exempt application or IRS leadership attempted to obstruct justice. Based on the evidence developed in this investigation, the recommendation of the experienced career prosecutors and supervising attorneys at the Department of Justice, we are closing our investigation and will not seek any criminal charges.
That's right. Every investigation that has been done into this said that there was no criminal wrongdoing. On January 14th, 2014, the Justice Department, the FBI in particular, said it's not going to prosecute anyone for the scandal, saying that they never found any evidence of political bias or, quote, enemy hunting, unquote, because that would have been criminal, but it didn't happen. Then in March of 2015, the Justice Department decided not to pursue criminal contempt charges against Lois Lerner because Lois Lerner, she resigned. She's no longer with the IRS. And when she was called to testify in front of Congress, she pled the fifth, which is her right to do, to not incriminate herself. And she has been the subject of this witch hunt the whole time, which I'll go off on in a second. But then on October 23rd of 2015, this was finally officially declared case closed when the Justice Department closed its investigation for good, concluding that there was no criminal wrongdoing. But despite the findings by every investigation that this was not politically motivated, by repeating it over and over again, there is a purposeful bullshit campaign going on in Congress trying to make it seem like the investigations said that they were. And it's just not true. Here's Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina.
We're actually here today because there was a culture of discrimination in the agency that has the power of intimidation in a way that no other agency in the federal government has. And it used that power of intimidation against conservative organizations, and then there was a cover-up of that intimidation. That's why we're having this hearing today.
Here's Senator Chuck Grassley of Iowa.
It's clear to me from the report that political biases and poor management went hand in hand with politically motivated behavior.
In the House of Representatives, here's Representative John Ratcliffe of Texas.
Rewind this story all the way to the beginning. We know that this began with the IRS singling out and targeting conservative groups because of their beliefs. We know that the IG has confirmed that. And the problem here is the IRS went after and targeted select groups of Americans because of their political beliefs. And in this case, it was conservatives.
There was even a video made by Representative Jason Chaffetz of Utah. He's the chairman of the House Government Oversight and Reform Committee, and he's really the one leading this charge here against the IRS. He made this 10-minute video, which was so full of lies that I just couldn't help myself from screaming at the TV. And this was one of them.
Let's rewind. In 2013, the IRS admitted to the selective intentional targeting of American taxpayers based on their political beliefs.
And there's one person in particular who is just refusing to go along with this "it was politically motivated" line. He's just not having it, and that's IRS Commissioner John Koskinen.
I respectfully would disagree with the characterization of what has the situation at the IRS is. The IG, the Department of Justice, GAO have all looked for instances of political bias actually targeting anyone, and none of those reviews have come up with a single case. Clearly, I don't mean to minimize at all the delays, the mismanagement that took place from the start. We've apologized to people for those delays. It shouldn't happen, but continuing to characterize it as if there's a politicized atmosphere and that's causing a lack of public confidence. If we say that enough, there will be a lack of public confidence. The independent investigations that have looked at that have not found a single instance of that. Doesn't mean we don't need to take the actions. You have a bipartisan report after 2.5 long years, which is, I think, terrific. We responded quickly. We think the recommendations you recommended to us that we have control over are important and thoughtful, and we're going to implement them. And our hope is that our response positively to the committee will, in fact, restore whatever confidence has been lost. But I would say that, again, just reiterate, I think it's important for the public to understand that while people may feel they were targeted, there's been no objective review that has found that to be true.
And so there are members of Congress who are now trying to impeach John Koskinen, the IRS commissioner. Now, for those of you who aren't aware of impeachment is a way for Congress to remove members of the other two branches of government from office if it's needed. And to explain how this would work, this is Todd Garvey. He is an attorney at the Library of Congress.
The Constitution establishes a general framework governing the execution of impeachment. Unlike the lawmaking function, the impeachment power is given wholly to Congress, with the House exercising the sole power of impeachment and the Senate the sole power to try those impeachments. But the Constitution also establishes a number of limitations and safeguards on the use of the impeachment power. Among the limitations are that the officials eligible for impeachment are limited to the President, Vice President, and those who qualify as civil officers, and that the offenses for which an eligible official may be impeached and removed are limited to treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. Among the safeguards are the requirement that the 2/3 of the Senate concur in any impeachment conviction, and that the consequences of conviction shall not extend further than removal from office and disqualification from holding a future federal office.
Impeachment is rare. In my lifetime, I've only seen it once when the Republican Party impeached President Clinton for lying about a blowjob. And when it comes to impeachment of an agency official, that hasn't happened in any of our lifetimes. The last time it happened was in 1876 when the Secretary of War, William Belknap, under President Ulysses S. Grant, was impeached for bribery. Although it is worth mentioning that he was impeached after he had already resigned, proving that our habit of electing stupids to Congress goes back at least 140 years. The following clip is of Michael Gerhardt. He's a professor in constitutional law, and he testified to Congress on whether the impeachment of John Koskinen was either allowed or appropriate.
We're moving into uncharted waters here. The fact is that as far as impeachment is concerned, this body, the House of Representatives, has never impeached a sub-cabinet level official.
So this is not normal. This is an extraordinary and unprecedented move. And so why John Koskinen? What did he do? Well, the reason that they say they want to impeach him is supposedly because of some emails of Lois Lerner's that weren't turned over to Congress. Because you see, in April of 2011, Lois Lerner's hard drive broke. And at some point, the backup tapes were recycled. They were destroyed. And, even though the U.S. government has the ability to get the best technology available, God knows the intelligence community has it, the IRS has never been given enough funding to upgrade their tech. And so they're still using physical tapes. It's like the 1980s in the IRS, apparently. And in April of 2011, when all this happened, John Koskinen was retired. He wasn't the IRS commissioner at the time. He wasn't even confirmed until December of 2013. And then about 8 weeks after becoming IRS commissioner, Congress subpoenaed Lois Lerner's emails, and John Koskinen, in front of Congress, promised to turn them all over, not realizing they had been destroyed. I mean, he had only been running the agency for about 2 months. When he found out that they were destroyed, he immediately reported that to the Obama administration, but he waited and reported it to Congress a little bit later. Investigations by the Justice Department and the Treasury Department's Inspector General found that the destruction of the tapes was accidental and that John Koskinen had nothing to do with it, which even Jason Chaffetz, the leader of this witch hunt, had to admit.
Now, in fairness, Mr. Koskinen, as the commissioner of the IRS, was not there for the initial targeting. He was brought in by President Obama as a turnaround artist, somebody who'd work hand in hand with Congress to fix the problem.
And so what are they saying that Koskinen did to deserve the extreme measure of impeachment? Well, here's Representative John Ratcliffe of Texas.
The commissioner failed to comply with the subpoena. He failed to prevent the destruction of evidence, in this case, more than 24,000 of Ms. Lerner's emails. He provided false testimony to Congress on a number of occasions. His statement today said that he testified truthfully and to the best of his knowledge. But the fact is, he didn't testify truthfully. It may have been to the best of his knowledge, but it was not truthful. And he failed to notify Congress when key evidence was missing.
The fact is that John Koskinen failed to comply with the subpoena because he's not a wizard and he can't make destroyed tapes reappear. He told Congress that he would turn over the emails, not because he was lying, but because he didn't know that they were destroyed. And then he did notify Congress of their destruction, just not as fast as the witch hunters would have liked. But that's about it. That's all they got. Well, that and some straight bull being peddled by the parade of dipshits that somehow got appointed to the powerful House Judiciary Committee. Here's Louis Gohmert of Texas.
The Internal Revenue Service is the only entity of which I'm aware in the federal government that can ignore the Constitution as part of its job. Nobody else gets to ignore the Constitution.
Which is obviously not true. They don't get to ignore the Constitution. Here's Trey Gowdy of South Carolina.
The notion that you can only impeach someone who commits an actual violation of the criminal code is nonsense. There are lots of ways to screw up in your job that don't rise to the level of meeting the U.S. criminal code.
Which is not true. You actually need to do something wrong in order to be impeached. Here again is Todd Garvey he's an attorney, a lawyer at the Library of Congress. Here's a refresher on, the qualifications for impeachment.
The Constitution also establishes a number of limitations and safeguards on the use of the impeachment power. Among the limitations are that the officials eligible for impeachment are limited to the president, vice president, and those who qualify as civil officers, and that the offenses for which an eligible official may be impeached and removed are limited to treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors.
Now, no one is accusing John Koskinen of treason or bribery. That can't be even alleged because it so clearly didn't happen. So it has to come down to other high crimes and misdemeanors. And how are they defining that? Well, here's former chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, Darrell Issa. He started this witch hunt and led it for years. He's still on the House Judiciary Committee. And here's what he said about that qualification, which is the only one that they can possibly fit John Koskinen into if they want to impeach him.
According to Wikipedia, at least, the definition of high crimes and misdemeanor constitutionally says it covers allegation of misconduct.
According to Wikipedia, he's getting his law advice from Wikipedia. I can change Wikipedia right now to say that I can impeach Donald Duck for not wearing pants. Wikipedia is not a good source for anything. And this is what they're going on. But according to people who actually know what they're talking about and read, books instead of Wikipedia like Michael Gerhardt, professor in constitutional law. This is what he says about the impeachment that's going on here.
That when we consider whether or not particular misconduct qualifies as an impeachable offense, it has to at least have two elements. One is bad intent, malicious intent, and the other is seriously bad conduct. In my opinion, and I'm just a law professor, but in my opinion, I think gross negligence or gross incompetence doesn't qualify as an impeachable offense.
So this email thing, I mean, that being the reason, first of all, it's really shaky on like a legal ground level, but I also don't think that's the real reason they're trying to get rid of John Koskinen. I really don't. You know, here's Daryl Issa speaking to Jason Chaffetz in one of these hearings.
And you're here today just after the General Accountability Office, a nonpartisan part of Congress, found that conservative groups are still being targeted as we speak. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So the IRS hasn't stopped doing their job. They're still looking at the applications for 501c4 status and seeing if they're political or not. And then there's also this. This is Blake Farenthold of Texas, also speaking to Jason Chaffetz.
This is our opportunity to take a stand. I'm a co-sponsor of your impeachment legislation on Mr. Koskinen. Do you think that proceeding with this will send the message to the administration and the alphabet soup of executive branch agencies, don't mess with Congress?
I do.
So the IRS is still looking into political groups who are trying to hide their donors. And there's also an aspect of respect my authority going on here. But I think that the real reason why they're trying to throw John Koskinen out of office has to do with this exchange I'm about to play for you between Senator Orrin Hatch and John Koskinen, the IRS Commissioner. And I just want to put it out there that Orrin Hatch led an investigation into this. He's the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee. And I do want to put it out there that even though he's the person I'm going to play for you right now, his conversation really got to the bottom of why I think John Koskinen has a big target on his back. But Orrin Hatch does not support the impeachment of John Koskinen, at least not right now. And he physically did the investigation, and he's not even taking it that far. So I just want to put it out there. I'm not blaming this on Orrin Hatch, but this really tells you the sin that John Koskinen is committing in the eyes of these congressmen.
In my opening statement, I mentioned the IRS and Treasury Department's 2013 proposal to restrict the free speech of certain groups of Americans by rewriting 56-year-old rules governing the activity of 501c4 social welfare organizations. Now, the IRS subsequently withdrew them after widespread bipartisan opposition. I know we disagree on the need for changes to the rules governing C4 organizations, and I know that you've committed that no new rules will take effect before 2017. But this leaves open the possibility that the IRS will make proposals this year or next year, creating confusion and uncertainty regarding the free speech of certain groups and their ability to engage in civic activities like nonpartisan voter registration or candidate forums. Can you tell the committee whether any new proposals will be released before 2017, and if so, when you expect that to happen?
At this point, we don't have a timeline. We would hope that we'd be able to provide these proposed new rules early enough next year so that the work on them could be completed well in advance of the election so there wouldn't be any confusion. But I would stress that the work that we're doing now is focused on clarifying, not changing, but clarifying the rules under which organizations operate. So I think once we get those out, people will, in fact, on all sides, understand much better what it is that we're talking about within the existing standards of operation. I think that clarity will benefit everyone.
Well, with the IRS unable to meet its basic duties of answering taxpayer phone calls and better protecting against tax fraud, I strongly encourage you to stop spending agency time on such controversial and counterproductive proposals.
So that's it. That's what's really going on here. John Koskinen wants to make the rules clear about what is and what is not a social welfare organization. And Koskinen already has some specific ideas for what the new qualifications will be looking for. Here's an exchange between Senator Bill Nelson of Florida and John Koskinen.
I understand you are going through trying to figure out some kind of guidance on this. So what are you doing in issuing the guidance?
What we're doing is looking, as I say, we have three questions that we've asked for comments on. One is, what's the definition of political activity? The second is, how much of it can you do? And the third part of it is, to which C organization should the standard apply?
Remember, clearly political groups like Crossroads GPS are getting approved to keep their donors secret under the current standards. And this guy wants to change that. Any clarification of the rules can and will lead to denials of applications, maybe even reviews of already approved applications. For the people that benefit from the dark money ads and bulk grassroots campaigns, they don't want this to happen, and replacing John Koskinen would stop his clarification efforts in their tracks. And so where are we now in this impeachment process? Well, there is a House resolution that has been passed through a committee that would censure John Koskinen. It's kind of the first step. And here's Todd Garvey, the attorney from the Library of Congress, to explain what censure means.
Censure may be a tool available to the House as either an alternative to or supplement for impeachment of an executive branch official. A censure resolution can be in the form of a one-house or concurrent resolution and may include a formal reprimand of the executive branch official or express the House's opinion that the official should resign or be removed by the president. A censure resolution is not legally binding, but may be significant for its symbolic impact.
And so House Resolution 737, this was passed through the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee. This is the one chaired by the, head witch hunter, Jason Chaffetz. That committee passed the censure out of the committee on a 23-15 party line vote. Every Republican voted yes and every Democrat voted no. So this is definitely one of those issues where party does matter. This is a Republican effort, plain and simple. And the censure itself suggests that John Koskinen should resign or be fired by the president. But it also goes a step further, a step that, according to Todd Garvey, I don't even know if this is allowed, but it suggests that John Koskinen be denied all of his retirement payments. So he would be denied his pension from the federal government. And this IRS gig is not his only government job. He's been in and out of government for like 30 years. He was actually the guy that was in charge of making sure that the technology in the government didn't crash during like Y2K. Remember that? Where we thought that when it went from 1999 to 2000, like all hell was going to break loose. Well, John Koskinen is the guy that's credited with making sure that all hell didn't break loose. He did a pretty damn good job because, hell is not fancy free. And so this is a really harsh thing to try and do to the man. And I think that the motivation for this is to intimidate anyone at the IRS. If they can go after the guy at the very top who wasn't even there, when these decisions were made to target these groups based on the political words in their names. If he can be denied not only his job, if he can be fired, but then also denied his retirement, that is going to scare anyone in the IRS out of looking into social welfare organizations ever again. I honestly believe that that's the goal. After this, I don't really know where the impeachment stands, but I do know that the people in Congress that are, pushing this censure, and they're pushing for the impeachment, they're pushing for it quite hard. But if the impeachment doesn't happen, which I hope it doesn't, it's so crazy. But if the impeachment doesn't happen, there's also a bunch of bills that are moving through Congress right now that have to do with this very same issue. If they can't impeach the guy to stop the investigations into the 501c4 social welfare organizations, they're going to try other methods. And so here's Senator Pat Roberts of Kansas with a list of some of the bills.
You're talking about delays. We're talking about targeting. But without question, there is much more than we can do. There are some very common sense structural changes we should consider. Chairman Hatch, Ranking Member Hyden, Senator Grassley, others have given us a full legislative prescription. Now, we have a number of other sound ideas that have been offered by committee members, including legislation by Senator Coates to provide a legal right of action when C4 applications are delayed, Senator Grassley and Portman's Taxpayer Bill of Rights, Senator Portman on gifts to C4s, Senator Cornyn's Small Business Protection Proposal, and my legislation with Senator Flake to put a stop to further action on the C4 regulation rewrite.
So let's take a quick, closer look at those bills that he was talking about. First, there was the bill sponsored by Senator Dan Coates. This is S-1728, the Access Act. And what this bill does is it basically says that if the IRS hasn't made a determination on an application for 501c4 status after 270 days, the courts can decide. Next is Chuck Grassley's Taxpayer Bill of Rights. This is S-1578. This bill says that Congress has to be notified why the IRS commissioner decides not to fire an employee. So the default is to just, have people lose their jobs when they do things that Congress doesn't like. It also requires the IRS employee emails to be stored for 15 years and then filed in the National Archives. This bill also quadruples criminal penalties for unauthorized disclosures and inspections of applications. And this has to do with the fact that Crossroads GPS had their tax return information leaked to ProPublica while they were being evaluated for, social welfare organization status. So that's what that's all about. This bill also prohibits IRS employees from using personal email accounts for official business, which you should probably add the State Department to that, Hillary Clinton. And then this bill would also give organizations the ability to challenge their denials of tax-exempt status in court. So, if things didn't go Crossroads GPS's way and the IRS, held to their proper decision to deny them the social welfare organization status, they would have yet another way to challenge that, this time in court. Then there's Rob Portman's bill. This is S942, the Fair Treatment of All Gifts Act. And what this does is it expands the tax deduction for charity to include gifts to 501c4 social welfare / political organizations that want to hide their donors. Then there's John Cornyn's zombie bill from the 113th Congress. He's been trying to get this passed for a long time. This is S949, the Small Business Taxpayer Bill of Rights. And first of all, this one defines a small business as one that makes less than $50 million a year. That's a pretty big small business. But it also increases fines for unauthorized inspection or disclosure of tax returns by 10 times the current penalties. It also institutes mandatory unpaid leave for at least 30 days for any IRS employee that reviews an application for tax-exempt status using, quote, any methodology that applies disproportionate scrutiny to any applicant based on the ideology expressed in the name or purpose of the organization. So this just prohibits that strategy that I think is a good one. If you look at an organization's name and there's a political word in it, it might be a political organization. I still see nothing wrong with that strategy. This bill would also allow the courts to make a determination on applications if the IRS hasn't done so in 270 days. And then it also orders the Treasury Inspector General to pretty much never stop investigating whether the IRS is looking at applications based on race, religion, or political ideology. So it's just a solution in search of a problem. And then last, there's the bill from Senators Pat Roberts and Jeff Flake. This one is co-sponsored by 37 senators. 37% of the Senate is already on board with this. And this is S283, the, quote, Stop Targeting of Political Beliefs by the IRS Act, unquote. So there's a lie right there in the title. And what this bill would do is it would say that the standard used to determine whether an organization is a 501c4 social welfare organization that was used on January 1st, 2010, so before the whole Tea Party wave, that's the standard that has to be used until February 28th, 2017. It prohibits the IRS from changing the standard before this election year is over. And Speaker Paul Ryan introduced an identical bill in the House of Representatives, and Speaker Ryan's version goes even further. It prevents the standard from changing before December 31st of 2017. So basically nothing could be done about this dark money until 2018. Now, those are bills that have been introduced. They haven't really moved too far, but they're kind of like sitting there waiting for their turn. But there is some dingleberries that already became law related to this. First of all, in the 2016 government funding bill, which was that 2,000-page government funding law that was dropped less than 3 days before it got a vote in the House, that was a very, very long bill, and hidden in that law now was a provision that said that the IRS is not allowed to change the qualifications for determining 501c4 status until the end of the fiscal year. So already John Koskinen is not able to change those qualifications before September 30th. It's just simply not allowed by law. And it turns out that in the appropriations process right now, that dingleberry is being inserted again. So they're trying the same exact strategy because hell, why not? It worked. They're going to try that again with this year's government funding, which I'm sure is going to be funded the same way it's been funded the last 4 years at the last minute in a massive bill that no one has time to read. So we should definitely be on the lookout for that. We also have to be on the lookout for HR 5053, the Preventing IRS Abuse and Protecting Free Speech Act. This is a bill that has already passed the House of Representatives. This one's moving. And so the backstory on this is that we already know that the public is not given the names of donors to 501c4 organizations. However, those organizations still have to disclose donor information to the IRS on annual tax returns for anyone who gives them more than $5,000. Well, what this bill would do is it would prohibit these 501c4 organizations from being required to disclose any information about their contributors, including that person's name, address, or the amount of their contribution or gift on their annual tax returns. This one passed the House of Representatives 240 to 182, mostly on party lines. It was the Republican Party that pushed this one through. And there was only one Republican that said no. That was Christopher Gibson of New York. And almost the entire Democratic Party said no to this, except for one Democrat, which is Collin Peterson of Minnesota. Collin Peterson, how many times have we heard that name? This guy might as well be a Republican. He votes for Republican stuff all the time. The Obama administration, as far as they're concerned, they gave an official statement that said that they oppose the bill, but they did not issue a veto threat. The author of this bill is Peter Roskam of Illinois. His top contributor for this election is fossil fuel and nuclear energy giant Exelon Corporation, which has given him $27,500 for this election and over $126,000 in total. According to the Center for Public Integrity, Exelon Corporation gave over $317,000 to social welfare nonprofits in 2012 alone. And the only reason we know this is because Exelon Corporation reported this voluntarily. Number 7 on Peter Roskam's contributor list is Koch Industries, which has given Roskam $17,500 for this upcoming election and over $57,000 in total. USA Today reported that this bill protecting secret donations was backed by the billionaire Koch brothers. According to the Center for Responsive Politics, the politically active nonprofits with the closest ties to the Koch brothers are some of the biggest spenders in the dark money world. 3 of them are in the top 10 and 6 are in the top 20. In 2012, the political spending by the Koch's nonprofit Americans for Prosperity was second only to Karl Rove's Crossroads GPS. They're in the middle of all of this. Even the 60 Plus Association, the social welfare group I told you about in the beginning of the episode that was hired by the lobbying firm, which is paid by the hedge funds that don't want Puerto Rico to have access to bankruptcy laws. Well, that social welfare organization has received over $2.6 million from the Center to Protect Patients' Rights, which is a dark money child of the Koch brothers that for years was known as the largest dark money conduit giving money to 501c4s involved in federal elections. The point of all this is that these bills and the impeachment of John Koskinen are not in the interest of fair elections. They're motivated by selfish, greedy people who want to keep secret the names of the people providing them with legal bribes, attack ads, and orchestrating fake grassroots movements which benefit their own agendas and campaigns. Like we heard earlier, they say this is all to protect the First Amendment free speech rights of these organizations. But here's the thing about free speech. The whole point of speaking is so that people can hear what you say. It's about disclosure. And to tell you the truth, I'm actually fine with the Supreme Court's decision that said that people and organizations should be able to spend as much money as they want on influencing elections. It's your money. Spend it as you wish. But if money is speech, then we should be able to hear what you're saying. You should have to identify yourself. So I have a legislative goal that I'm going to push for, and you're free to join me if you want to. But I want all political spending to be reported to the public. If an organization spends 1 penny on influencing votes, they should have to disclose the names and amounts of their donations. We should know who's speaking to us. And some members of Congress are on board with this idea. This is an exchange between Senator Orrin Hatch, Republican chairman of the Senate Finance Committee, and Senator Bill Nelson, Democratic senator from Florida.
Political purposes can sometimes be social purposes, and that's why the IRS is allowed at least 50% to be used for political purposes, if I understand it correctly.
Mr. Chairman, I believe that all of it ought to be disclosed.
Well, I see you do, Senator, but then all of the union money ought to be disclosed too. And
I agree.
It amounts to hundreds of millions of dollars.
I agree.
It's never going to be because the Democrats are not going to allow that to happen.
Now, you guys know that I hate party politics. I like to pretend that the Republicans and Democrats don't even exist. But a pattern, a very clear pattern, emerged in the research for this episode, and it's on party lines. It shouldn't be ignored. There is one party that is trying to prevent the qualifications for 501c4 social welfare status from ever being clarified. There is one party that is trying everything they can to keep dark money from the light, and that party is the Republican Party. Now, I'm not saying that the Democratic Party is our answer here. I mean, Hillary Clinton is their presumptive nominee, and she's drowning in dark money. But the Republican Party leading Congress is a problem here. The Republicans are trying to impeach John Koskinen, something that I would bet my life would not be happening if the Democrats were controlling Congress. And if you're going to vote based on your representative stance on money and politics, H.R. 5053 is the bill of the Congress to judge your congressman on. And all but one Republican voted yes on keeping the donors secret. Your tax money and the investigation power of your Congress has been spent on this fake scandal for 6 years and counting, while illegal wars rage on. If you don't consider protecting secret donors to politicians to be a high priority, then what they're doing doesn't represent you, and it doesn't represent me. On this issue, partisanship, the red-blue divide, it's real. And that's worth remembering when voting for Congress in December or November, which is when we actually vote.
Okay, so I'm guessing that the way that this episode sounds just shifted a little bit because I am in a completely different state than where I was when I recorded the beginning of this episode. I am now in Illinois. I'm sitting in my hotel room in Chicago, which I now have for, 41 more minutes. So this part of the episode will not be more than 41 minutes because I need to check out of this place. My voice is all crackly because I am at Podcast Movement, which is the yearly conference of podcasters during which I never shut up. And this year I had an even bigger reason to be talking the whole time, which is that I was invited to speak this year. And so I gave a presentation yesterday. It was my first time since college speaking in front of a room full of people. And, a lot of my friends here remind me that I speak to thousands of people every time I pick up this microphone, but it's definitely different doing this physically because right now, my atmosphere right now is in a room by myself. I can't see people, but yesterday I was able to see people in the room and I was so nervous, but it actually went really well. Once I got up there, I just started jabbering as I usually do. And and I've been told by mainly my friends that it went really well, but I tend to believe them because they're all honest people. So I think it went really well. I enjoyed the experience, so I'm not so afraid to speak at other things. And so that was really nice. And what's also been really nice in the past couple of weeks is that, as many of you know, Congressional Dish was nominated for just about every podcast award that exists this year. First was the People's Choice Podcast Awards. That was the one that you physically went to podcastawards.com and you nominated Congressional Dish. And they had the award ceremony, and unfortunately we did not get the award. But I know that one, we were nominated because of you. So thank you to everyone who nominated the show and everyone who bothered to vote. I know we got votes. We just didn't get enough, and that just happens. We're still a relatively small podcast. So I totally get it. It's an honor to be nominated. It was also a huge honor to be nominated for the Academy of Podcasters Awards in the news and politics category, because that one it's the podcasting community. And I don't really understand how the behind the scenes works, but that one was a nomination from the podcasters community. And the award ceremony was the first night of this conference. And it went to a show I've never heard before, but I definitely want to check out. The award winner was Embedded. It's an NPR show. And I guess the hosts embed themselves in Afghanistan and Iraq. And I like Congressional Dish. Obviously, it's my baby. But I'm doing it from the safety of my living room most of the time. And these people are actually putting themselves in harm's way to bring us stories. And so congratulations to the people at Embedded. That's a very impressive thing that they're doing. But what was also a surprise at the Academy of Podcasters Awards is there was a People's Choice category. And to my surprise, they had a section of the podcasting during the award ceremony where they told the audience to vote for the final four, and Congressional Dish was in the final four. And I have no idea how that happened. I have no idea how they picked that, but I was thrilled. And it turns out that fantasy football won that one, because who would guess that fantasy football is more popular than Congress? But that was such an honor too. So there's been a lot of honors for Congressional Dish lately. And in the past 3.5 years, we've now been nominated for 5 awards, lost them all. But that's okay. It's such an honor to be nominated. This has been such a good year for the podcast. You know, I really have you to thank because this podcast would be nothing without you. It would be nothing if you weren't supporting it. It would be nothing if you weren't nominating it for these awards. It would be nothing if you weren't marketing the podcast. Because I was reminded once again when a friend of mine who interviewed me, Rob Walsh is my friend, and he hosts Podcast 411. So I will be on an upcoming episode of his podcast. And he asked me, what do you do for marketing? And I realized once again, I've done nothing. I want to start marketing. I talked to the girl that I'm going to hire her to be my agent for the next year. And I just finished speaking to her. But so far, you've been the Congressional Dish marketing department and you've done a phenomenal job. So, you guys are such a huge part of Congressional Dish. Yes, I'm the one sitting here babbling into the microphone. It would not exist still without you. I would not be here without you. I would not have been invited to speak without you. You are everything. You are Congressional Dish. And so much of that is because of our funding model. Because this podcast is listener supported. I am extremely lucky that every session at this convention where it's like, how to kiss sponsor ass and get advertisements for your podcast, I don't have to walk in those doors and I can walk away from those conversations. And I can only do that because of you. This podcast, I think, is better because of the lack of advertising. And the only way that this works is because of listener support. It's only because you are going to PayPal and you're sending physical checks and then you're using the Amazon search box and you're sending Bitcoins. We're still getting Bitcoins. But this is successful financially because of you. And yes, this is a inconsistent model. I had a very high and a very low that a lot of you know about from the last episode. And I expect that to continue. But over the long haul, I consider myself a successful podcaster, and I think other people at this convention do too. And that's 100% because of you. So thank you very much, you guys. And if you want to continue to support the podcast or to support it for the first time, because we need a lot of the people that haven't been contributing, I do need you guys to step up, and I'll tell you why in a sec. But if you want to contribute to Congressional Dish, you go to congressionaldish.com. There's a support page where all your options are listed, including PayPal, where you can set up a subscription to contribute on a regular basis. You can also send in one-time amounts of your choosing. You can also send in physical checks. There's a P.O. box where people are sending checks to. And then also, if you are shopping on Amazon, if you enter Amazon by looking for whatever you're going to buy in the search box on congressionaldish.com, it's on every page on the top right-hand side. If you enter what you want to buy into that search box and you go to Amazon that way, everything you put in the cart in that shopping section is going to give Congressional Dish a commission, and that really adds up. Thank you guys. I'm just really appreciating the hell out of you right now because I just feel very, very lucky to have every one of you be a part of this project. It's working, guys. It's working. People are listening and people are appreciating it. And I think good things are coming. So thank Christ. That said, I do want to tell you guys a little story. This is why I really need your support because it's been kind of a crazy week. Support dropped off and I'm still not quite understanding that after the transportation episode. But it came back. So I will thank the people that have contributed since that episode. I will be thanking you in a second. But we also had something very strange happen, which has been a pretty big financial hit for Congressional Dish, which is that I got this email from some dude in China. I'm not going to go naming names because what's the point? But this guy from China sends me an email and he says that, actually, I should thank him for this. I won't say his name, but I guess I shouldn't be so mad. But he sent me an email saying that there is someone who's trying to trademark Congressional Dish as their own in China. And they wanted to register not only Congressional Dish as their trademark, but they also wanted all of the domain names that weren't congressionaldish.com. I'm sure they want that too, but I already own it. But they listed like 20 different domains that this person was ready to buy. So I went and bought the domains for 10 years for congressionaldish.everything American. So now I have congressionaldish.us and .net and .org and .whatever. Anything that was for the United States, I bought them. The Chinese guy can have the ones for the rest of the world because I just can't afford to go buying every Congressional Dish everything in the universe. However, here's an idea. If you want to buy the Congressional Dish like Hong Kong or China or whatever, or
Colombia or Canada. If you want to buy those yourselves and you send me an email and you just redirect it to congressionaldish.com and steal it from this guy in China, I would love that. In fact, if you want to buy any domain name, and I know that I'm stealing this from No Agenda, but I don't care. If you want to buy any domain name in the universe and redirect it to congressionaldish.com, I will never argue with that decision. So, so yeah, that's an option. But this guy's trying to do that, and I'm pretty sure he's not doing it to help me. But the one that really pissed me off is trying to trademark Congressional Dish. This is mine. I've been using it for 4 years. And so now I had this unexpected legal bill. It's about $600 so far to get the process started with the U.S. Trademark Office. I've submitted my application, and I just got the email telling me it's going to take possibly up to 1.5 years to make my own business name officially mine. But I'm basically racing this guy in China to own my own company's name, which is so annoying. And so it's been an extremely expensive week for Congressional Dish. That's on top of, basically when it comes out financially for June, I was $1,000 in the hole, made $1,000 less than I had to spend on the podcast. And then July is looking just as ugly because of this stupid trademark thing. And I also, because I am financially irresponsible, am also hiring the agent because I have to strike while the iron is hot. This is the 2016 election year and I can't wait anymore. So I'm just kind of going on faith that funding will pick up. So I am going to hire the agent. And I also just bought the hotel room for LA Podfest because I want to go. I haven't been invited to speak or anything there, but it is a place where podcasters and fans get to meet. And I want to do that. I love this podcast movement conference and I enjoy coming here every year, but it's not a fan conference. And LA Podfest is the first and I think only so far yearly fan podcast festival. So I'm going to go and I'm hoping to meet you guys there. So LA Podcast Festival is September 23rd through 25th. In Beverly Hills in Los Angeles. And so if you're thinking of going and that pushes you over the edge, I definitely want to arrange some kind of meetup, some kind of hangout. I'll be there all weekend, just hanging out and trying to meet as many of you as possible. So that's happening. I'm making a lot of reckless financial decisions trying to grow Congressional Dish. And so I'm really hoping that you guys will help. But right now, I'd like to thank the people who have helped since the Puerto Rico episode. Support did pick back up a bit, and so this has been helpful and gave me some of my spirits back. So thank you very much to these people. We have some new subscribers. First up on the list, our largest new subscriber is Brenda Briney. She is now contributing $21 a month. And it says here in my notes that you sent in a paper check donation too. Because I'm in Chicago and then next week I'll be in St. Louis at the Netroots Nation political conference, I can't do the paper check thank yous for a little while. So I know that there's going to be more subscribers and new paper check people, but as of right now, I don't have those checks with me. So I can't thank you for those until not the next episode, but the episode after that. So we'll have a pretty extended thank you section. But yeah, Brenda Briney, I'm pretty sure I'm not related to you. We checked with the family and we're not aware of a Brenda, but it's so cool to know there's another Briney on the Congressional Dish team. So thank you so much for your contribution. I am so happy to know you exist. I would also like to know where you're from, just out of curiosity. So send me an email, girl. We also have an increased subscription. These always make me feel great. From Bob Wilkerson. He increased his subscription from $15 to $20. So thank you very much, Bob. And then also Nicholas Zacharias increased his subscription from $11 a month to $17. And he left me a pretty long note, but you know what? Let's read it. It says, there was some trial and error involved in this, and I guess I can't find a way to increase my donation other than canceling the old payment profile and starting a new one for it. If that was wrong and stupid and confusing on your end, please forgive me. Nicholas, no, that's not stupid at all. In fact, I think that's the only way to do it. So that's usually what happens. And the way it works is if you don't wait in between canceling it and then signing up for the new one, I just see the two emails and I know that it's a raise and I don't, cry. So so thank you. No, that's totally normal and you're not stupid at all. Back to his note, said, as for the grant making a difference, I didn't make it through the transportation episode to that point. It's the only one I skipped since October, but only because I was on vacation. But I don't think it would have affected my donation. If I honestly had to guess what happened, because I know it's been happening to me, it's that it's truly starting to feel hopeless investing in understanding and fixing the country for so many when all signs are pointing to the Democratic Party having stolen the primary from Briney.
I donated an insane amount of money, phone banked, voted, and attended rallies. Also, it could be stolen, and I feel even more disillusioned with my impact on the country with every Noam Chomsky documentary I see, every story I read about how little the Democratic Party actually cares about the non-rich and seems to only be efficient in creating more monstrous Republicans, and how powerful these people are that extremely popular reforms can't be implemented because it ruffles the feathers of a handful of already wealthy douchebags when I'm just some asshole with a liberal arts degree and an entry-level customer service job. Oh, I felt really inspired when you were talking about running for office and could possibly personally find hope again if you used the show to maybe chronicle that process a little if you're still committed to it. That's not a criticism or anything. It just felt like a good substantive that's not you spelling it bad. That's me not knowing how to speak. Substantive aspect to addressing all that was wrong in a more tangible way. I must still have a little hope, as supporting your show is even more important to me now that it might be in real danger, but it's so hard to be emotionally invested in all of this right now, Jen. The powers that are really beating me down, and I feel really powerless. I think addressing this might bring more people back, so that's why I'm glad that activism may start being a bigger part of the show. This is a ramble and kind of cynical and all over the place, but I'm feeling really lost, and for what it's worth, I think you're too smart and important to not keep supporting, and I hope the extra $5 a month helps. There's a lot going on here, Nicholas, and I understand being so frustrated right now, because if we were actually in a two-party system, what has been going on in the Democratic Party would be the most depressing thing in the world. The reason it doesn't depress me, well, there's two factors to this. The big overarching reason this isn't depressing me as someone who wanted Bernie to be the Democratic nominee is that, first of all, this is a Democratic Party problem. The thing that I am frustrated with is that people don't seem to understand the primary system, because the primary system is helping private clubs pick who their nominee is. The Republican Party is a private club. The Democratic Party is a private club. The Libertarian Party is a private club, as is the Green Party. The problem here are the parties. What you're frustrated with is not the American system. You're frustrated with the Democratic and Republican Party. And the thing is, we don't have to support them. We don't have to vote for them. We don't have to give them money. We don't have to participate in anything that they do. What you can do is support independent candidates. You can be independent yourself. And what I'm seeing with this particular election is the fraud that the Democratic Party was, the good party that was above it all. It has now been completely exposed by the way that the primary was handled and is still being handled. It's still not over. There's also that. This isn't over. The convention is not for 2 more weeks in Philadelphia, I think it is. And Hillary does not have the delegates she needs to officially be the nominee. She is not officially the nominee. And I'm not saying I think that Bernie, if I have a crystal ball, I'm not saying that he's going to be the nominee, but it's not impossible yet. That's the thing. Everything you're witnessing and everything you're frustrated with, that is exposing the Democratic Party as corrupt. It's not exposing the American system as corrupt, because you do have other options. There will be other people on your ballot for president. And also, the focus of Congressional Dish is Congress. We still get to vote for Congress. And so whether it's Hillary or Trump or Bernie or Gary Johnson or Jill Stein, whoever actually is the president on January 20th, 2017, they can't do anything if it's not funded by Congress. Our power still lies in Congress. So that's why I still have just as much hope as ever, because nothing about the American system has changed. There are 435 congressmen in the House of Representatives that we can fire every 2 years. So every 2 years, we hit the restart button. And so 1 year, if we just focus on Congress instead of the presidency, and we organize and we vote strategically for a good Congress, we can change the world. And we have an opportunity to do that every 2 years. It's a beautiful, beautiful system that we've given, and I still have so much hope in it. So don't lose hope. And then as for me running for office, I am married. I have a husband that I love, and I'm not planning on leaving. And he right now is in a job that he loves in San Francisco. And we don't know exactly what's going to happen right now, but he is paying his dues in the industry, and we have to be in the San Francisco area right now. I am not committed to living in the Bay Area forever. In fact, I don't like it enough to really be sad if and when we leave. And so the idea that I'm having now, because the way that California works, if you listen to the episode I did on how to run as an independent in all 50 states, California is one of the ones that makes it the hardest because of their top 2 primary system. So for the midterms, if I'm still in the Bay Area, what I'd have to do is I'd have to run for the primary, become one of the top 2 to get on the general election ballot. It's going to cost me about $2,000 to do it. And I would need some people to help me with signatures. And I'm not opposed to doing that. But going forward, I'm actually thinking about being a carpetbagging person who's, up for hire. So if there's a community that organizes itself and proves to me that they're serious and they want me to represent them, I'll come to you. So that's the idea that I've been kicking around more lately is, obviously people want someone who represents them to be their congressperson. And a lot of people won't vote for someone who's not local. And I get that, but a lot of people will. And so if there's a community that's already gotten together and said, this is the person that we want, I will come to you. I will establish residency. I will live there and I will do my best to represent you in Congress as your congressperson. I'll hire staff from your community that knows your community the best, but I will go and I will do basically Congressional Dish from inside Congress with an actual vote. And I will argue with these people to their faces. I would love to do that. So I'm thinking that might be a better strategy for a gypsy like me, because even when I'm at a podcast conference like this and someone says, where are you from? I always hesitate. I don't know how to answer that question. I was born from 2 Bostonian parents, but I didn't live in Boston until I was in my 30s. I was raised in Southern California. I lived in Hawaii for a few years. I lived in Oregon for a little bit. Now I'm in the Bay Area. I'm definitely not from the Bay Area. So it's like, where are you from? I don't know. I'm from the United States. That's the only thing that's certain. Although I lived in Germany for a while too, but that doesn't make me German. But that's the thing. Like, what am I? I'm an American. But yeah, I would love to get into Congress and do what I do from my kitchen table from Congress itself. So I'm not opposed to that. And I still have hope, so don't lose yours, because I have made this my whole life and I am just as hopeful as I was on day one. I'm not giving up because I still love our system. And I know that our votes count. So screw the parties, but I love the system. All right, so moving on, we have another raise, and this one's from Only Child Imaginations, which is amazing to me. Only Child Imaginations increased their subscription from $5.15 to $11 a month. And the thing about that is Only Child Imaginations, Brian, who owns that company, Brian is the one who does the artwork for all of our episodes here for Congressional Dish. So Only Child Imaginations is supporting this podcast. It is a great little company that does our artwork every single week on a volunteer basis and does such a beautiful job, tailored perfectly for every episode. And I just so appreciate your support and your hard work. And I'm so happy to have you on the team. So thank you, Brian, and your lovely wife. Yeah, just thank you so much. You guys are the best. We also are now getting $10.44 a month from Jeb Applegate. Thank you, Jeb. And Jeb sent me a note. He said, "Hi, Jen. Thank you for doing this educational and informative podcast. It was exactly what I was looking for to counteract the Kang versus Kodos news of corporate media. After loving to learn about government and policy in my youth, I had sadly given up on anything political other than the McLaughlin Group, and even that barely touches on Congress anymore. The trend of devoting exorbitant amounts of coverage to candidates who haven't been elected yet compared to people currently sitting in office who affect our lives on a daily basis is disheartening at best. I found Congressional Dish with your TPP episodes in January and have been stealing ever since. I've been meaning to contribute for a while, but always put it off until now. I just finished your episode on Puerto Rico and finally decided to shit or get off the pot because you are right. This is valuable information and you deserve compensation for the work you do. Hopefully my monthly contribution of $10.44 helps. The 44 cents is for my son who was born on April 4th. The main reason I didn't get around to contributing. Having a kid makes life nuts. Sincerely, Jeb Applegate." And thank you so much, Jeb, and your 1044 will definitely help. And that's very cool that you are contributing on behalf of your son. That's very sweet. We are also getting $10 a month now from Charles Whiteside. Thank you, Charles. We're getting $10 a month from Benjamin Chase. Thank you, Benjamin. We're also getting $5 a month from Judy Holloway. Thank you, Judy. And I actually think I've seen your name before, so thank you for your repeat donation. And we're also getting $5 a month from Abel Garrido. He said, "Hi, Jen. I really appreciated the piece you did on Puerto Rico. Half of my family is from there, so it really hits home. I've subscribed to be a regular donor. Sorry, it's not much. Hopefully it can be more in the future. Really indispensable information you're broadcasting and totally worth the effort. Keep it up. It'll pay off. I truly believe that. You're filling a void that's shamefully not done by our major media. Also, I agree. You should stop with the specifics of your financials. State whether you made your goals, but I'd leave things like grants out of it. No need to be too transparent on every penny you make unless it's with the IRS. That's different." Thank you for your contribution. And the thing is, like, for subscribers and for anyone who contributes, it's a crowdfunding type of thing. I appreciate all of your contributions at whatever amount you think is fair. So we really appreciate yours. And as far as the financials are concerned, what I talked to the people at Libsyn about, because Libsyn, they control the app for Congressional Dish. There's a free app that you guys should be downloading, because I don't know if I'll always keep it free. But for Apple and Android users, there's a free Congressional Dish app. And I can lock up certain episodes, like physically inside the app for subscribers and contributors only. And I'm strongly leaning towards doing that because, you know, the reaction and the complete lack of funding after I told you about that grant, it definitely spooked me. But also the people that I want to be transparent with, and 100% transparent. I don't want to be like half transparent. I don't want to tell you all the bad things and leave out all of the good. That feels shitty for me and just for you too. It just doesn't seem right. I want to tell you everything. The thing is, though, I want to tell the people who are a part of Congressional Dish everything. I want to tell my team members what's going on. The freeloaders, I don't really feel like I owe you anything. So what I think I might do is just lock up everything behind a paywall. The price will be, if you've ever donated anything, you have access to it. I'm not going to like set a price, but I want to be transparent with the people who are helping me do this. And so I can't tell you when I'm actually going to get around to locking up the extra part of the podcast, because there's also things I want to do too. Like I would love to do like a Mystery Science 3000 type episode for like the State of the Union, or have like a live one for the election. There's all kinds of stuff that I don't think is worthy of a main Congressional Dish episode, but I still want to do. I'd like to just, you know, for an hour, take phone calls, like your phone calls and chit chat. And so that's also the type of stuff where I can do less research intensive episodes for our community and not necessarily put it on the Congressional Dish feed. So that's what would go behind the paywall. It wouldn't just be the financial information. There would be more behind there. I think our community can have more fun for those of us who are pitching in and working and making this podcast grow. I think you deserve something special, and that includes transparency and extra episodes. So that is in the future. But for now, I really appreciate you helping with the podcast. And yeah, and I know that you've helped out before. So thank you very much. We also have an increased subscription from Jim Werwath, and it's from $1.11 a month to $3.33. And he said that he doubled his monthly contribution and will continue to do so as long as he can afford it. Thank you for your work. It will work out. What you do is terribly important for us as a nation, unquote. Thank you very much, Jim. I really appreciate your contributions. So that's it for our new subscribers. But like I said, paper check subscribers, I know you exist. I just can't get to my P.O. box from Chicago. So I will thank you guys later. But these are the one-time contributions since the Puerto Rico episode online. And so the largest one since Puerto Rico was $120 from William Conroy. So thank you so much, William. We also got $100 from David Lasco, who said, "Hello, Jen. I've been listening for only a couple of months so far. I caught one of your episodes on the No Agenda stream. Your analysis nicely supplements crackpots and buzzkills deconstruction. Keep up the good fight. Best regards, Dave Lasco." Thank you for the pronunciation help. And thank you so much for the contribution. We also got $100 from Gregory Koch, who I'm pretty sure is not a Koch brother, but is instead on the good side of, trying to save our democracy instead of bribing it into non-existence. So thank you, Gregory. We also got a $100 check from our good friend, Steve McMahon in Montana. And he said, "Jen, thanks for the Puerto Rico episode. I just read the new Confessions of an Economic Hitman. It ties so many things together. Don't get bummed about the contributions. So many of us really can't express how much you educate and enrich our knowledge about what really matters. Increasing my subscription, Steve McMahon." And then he also, it looks like, sent in an online contribution of $75. So Steve, thank you. You are one of our most consistent subscribers. So thank you very much. And then next, oh, you know what? One of the reasons I'm so confused here is I'm reading the show notes with my new assistant, Rebecca, who's doing a really good job, but we're still working out the kinks. And so I see here, I think she went to the P.O. box and picked up some of the paper checks. And so we have a paper check from my not a relative, Brenda Briney, who's from Illinois. Oh my God, we're not even that far from each other. She chipped in an extra $50 and says, Jennifer, I'm a big fan of Tom Hartman. And a few weeks ago, he retweeted something from you. Oh my God, that's so cool. I had no idea. For obvious reasons, your name caught my attention and I decided to check it out. I found Congressional Dish, took a listen, and decided this was something I needed to support. Politically, you are a girl after my own heart. Keep up the good work, Brenda Briney. P.S. I will be making a $20 monthly donation through PayPal after this. That is fantastic. Thank you, Brenda. And I had no idea I was even on Tom Hartman's radar. That is a person I would love to talk to. He was one of the people that got me into podcasting because I listened to him when I had a podcast subscription to Air America when that was a thing. So very, very cool. Thank you. And yeah, that's awesome. We also got $50 from AP, who said, hi, Jen. I just listened to Congressional Dish 128. I am financially struggling now, but I will make another donation. Hopefully, I will get in a place later this year where I can be a regular subscriber. As for why your numbers are low last accounting, I don't think it's you or your episode. You did nothing wrong. I think with the political climate now, along with events, probably put people in a different state of mind. It happens. Please hold on. I would be freaking out Oslo if I were you, but you have a good message you dish, and more people are eating it up. Ooh, I like that. I am telling friends, and some are engaging in your message. And thank you again, and please hang in there. Make another JRE appearance. That's how I found you. Okay, here's the thing. I never was on the Joe Rogan Experience. I would like to be. I would love to meet Joe Rogan. I am a big fan of his podcast. Joe Rogan has retweeted me a handful of times, and so maybe that's what you're thinking of, but I've never actually met him. So if you would like me to be on the Joe Rogan Experience, please tweet him that you would like that to happen, because I know that he does care about what his listeners think. So yeah, if you want to tweet Joe and just make that suggestion, it certainly can't hurt, because I would like to meet him too. Back to your note, it says, best PS, you can refer to me as AP or OM. Morphe is my artist name. Strange hearing my name on a radio or podcast. Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Every once in a while I'll be listening to a podcast and someone just like talks about me and I don't see it coming, and that freaks me out every single time it happens. So I totally know what you mean. We also got $50 from our good friend Ellis Thompson. Thank you very much, Ellis. I think she's still a current subscriber, and she was one of the very original subscribers. So thanks, Ellis. That's great. We also got $50 from Eric Acevedo, who left a note, a lot of notes today, which is always fun. He said, quote, your podcast was recommended on the comments section of an article about the Puerto Rico bill. Podcast number 128 was my first time listening. You broke it down beautifully. Thanks for bringing awareness not only to the bill, but also to the greater issue of second-class citizens, unquote. Gosh, that breaks my heart to think that we have second-class citizens, but we sure do, don't we? And as for Eric, you know how many people have listened to all 128 episodes and have never contributed a dime? So you listened to one episode and contributed $50. I think that's wonderful. So thank you very, very much. I'm happy that you are now in my universe. That is fantastic. We also got $28 from Spencer Kingman, and Spencer said, I've been listening to your site for a long time and I love it. If I remember correctly, in episode 127, you mentioned deaths and injuries associated with different types of travel, but I don't think you adjusted them by human miles traveled. Oh, you know what? That's true. I didn't, but I was just using a graph from the Department of Transportation. The thing is that I don't really want to judge it though by human miles traveled, because I don't think that's a fair way to compare. Just because we all use our cars so much more often than we use the planes, just out of like, we can't afford to fly to the grocery store, but we can take public transportation, you know? So comparing air travel to car travel in particular, safety wise, or like train, I don't know. I just don't think it's actually, I don't know what I think about it. You know, let me just think about it before I go spouting off half cocked, but that's a good point. So I'm just going to shut up. Back to your note. He said, I just sent in $28 because that's all I can afford to do right now. I need to go see my family. Totally get it. But I like to get to a point where I've paid you $5 to $10 per episode. I'm sorry you've been stressed about the drop in donations. Best wishes, Spencer Kingman. Thank you, Spencer. We also got a $25 check from our good friend Victor Kitt. Victor Kitt said, keep up the good work. Like the golf swing. Thank you, Victor. And you know what's crazy, you guys? So in my presentation, I was kind of like, in the morning, I was like, I wonder if I'm going to get any questions. And I wonder if anyone's going to ask me about the golf swing. It was the first question was about the golf swing, about the sound effects I put in there. It still remains the most controversial part of Congressional Dish, that damn golf swing. So funny. But I got it confirmed again that the reason that I do the golf swing is that you get kicked out of iTunes if you have explicit content. So one F-bomb, one SH, one C word, like all of those things will get you dropped out of iTunes in India, China, and many other countries. And we have Americans living there. So yeah, that's why I do the golf swing. That's my way of not editing what I say. So I have absolutely no filter, but still being able to stay in iTunes around the world. So there's a practical reason behind it. We also got $25 from Michael Lenker in Charlotte, North Carolina, beautiful city. And he said, I heard you from a mention in Reddit about the Puerto Rico episode and liked that one. I hope you can afford to keep up the good work. With your help, I think I will be able to. So thank you, Michael. We also got an additional $20.60 from David Turner, who is a longtime subscriber. And he said, Jen, I just canceled my PayPal subscription, but don't freak out. I was pretty distraught to hear about your financial woes in the Puerto Rico episode. I'm not sure if there is some psychology behind it. We hate it when our friends become successful, or maybe it was an awful coincidence. Either way, I'm upping my subscription amount. Thank you, David. You introduced me to the insanity that is the TPP in one of the first episodes that I listened to way back in 2013. It was something of a political awakening for me. I've begun following local, state, and federal politics a lot closer, and in the last year, I've begun donating to worthy candidates at every level. Sadly, it seems like Bernie Sanders' campaign is officially over, though I do still hope for some kind of convention or FBI miracle, and we just heard that FBI miracle's not coming, but maybe the convention? Anyway, back to your note. He said, I'm taking the $15 a month I was sending to him and adding it to the amount I've been donating to Congressional Dish. Oh, that reminds me. I'm cutting David off for a second. I want to go back to something that Nicholas said about the Bernie Sanders contributions. There's a class action lawsuit, you guys. If you have contributed to Bernie Sanders or to the DNC and you also rightly feel like it was rigged by the party leaders, there's a class action lawsuit that are suing because of that, because people have been donating and did think that it was a fair process. And now we know because of the emails that were leaked that they were planning for Hillary Clinton to be the nominee from May of 2015. So before any of us even voted. So we do have documents to back up a class action lawsuit. Now, I don't donate to politicians for obvious reasons, but if you did, look into that class action lawsuit and join it. Sue the DNC. They deserve it. So you do have options. Okay, back to David's note. He said, I sent one last PayPal contribution and you should be receiving checks from my bank for $20 monthly from here on out. I truly believe that the content Congressional Dish provides is incredibly valuable and unavailable from any other source. Thank you for calling bullshit on all of the nonsense going on in our government. Best wishes, David Turner. Thank you, David. You've been helping me with this for a long time. I really appreciate your support. I have to check out of this hotel room. All right, I'm going to have to go really fast through the rest of these. I apologize. We also got $20 from Charles Pullen of South Jordan, Utah. He said, Jen, hope you can find a way to keep going. Wish I could do more, but my family of 6, wow, is running on $45,000 a year. Yeah, I don't know how either. Thanks. Wow, that's tough. But thank you for finding a spare 20 for Congressional Dish. I'm honored. We also got $20 from Scott Olson, who said, great job on the Puerto Rico bill episode. Thank you very much. I'm glad you liked it. We also got $20 from Mark Forbes. Thank you, Mark. We also got $20 from Amy, wow, that's a Polish name, Krzyminski of Lake Forest Park, Washington. And she said, hey, Jen, sorry it's taking me so long to make a contribution to your podcast. I've been listening for about 6 months now. I'm a struggling college student, round 2, who knew that a BA in biochemistry would be so useless, who works part-time in social services and part-time delivering sandwiches on a bike to drunk college students to make ends meet. That actually sounds really fun. Back to her note, she said, I really appreciate all the work you do to make this podcast. All of your effort does not go unnoticed. I talk about your podcast all the time. Yes, Congressional Dish marketing team right here, especially to my friends who have actual real jobs. So hopefully some of them will hop on the bandwagon and make donations here and there. I even got some of the kids at the youth shelter that I work at to listen to a bit of your episode on the EU. Awesome. Thanks for all your effort. P.S. I made a $20 donation. Hope it helps at least a little bit. It absolutely does. Thank you. We also got $20 from Michael Lapp of Green Bay, Wisconsin. Go Packers. I don't really mean that. I'm not a Packer fan, but but thank you for the $20. We also got $20 from Maria Martinez. So thank you, Maria. We got $15 from Byron Verboot, who is a repeat contributor. Thank you, Byron.
We got $15 from Daniel Callis. Thank you, Daniel. We got $10.30, so we covered PayPal from Joshua Silberberg. Thank you, Joshua. We also got the very popular $10.30 from James Edwards of Greenfield, Indiana. He said, thank you for all that you do. Your podcast has opened my eyes to the real power and, frankly, the corruption in our government. Well, yeah. Thanks, James. We also got a check from Garrick Smalley of Berkeley, California. Thank you very much, Garrick. I think I said it was $10, but it's $10. Thank you very much. We also got $10 again from Ethan Avery. Thank you for your repeat contribution. He said, thank you for all your hard work. Thank you, Ethan. We also got $10 from Hassan Kamar, and he said, keep up the great work you're doing. Greetings from Alberta, Canada. Thank you, Canada. We also got $10 from Jan Solomon of Alston, Massachusetts. She said, wow, this is a long one. I'm going to go really fast, guys. She said, hey, Jen, thanks for taking the time to do the podcast on the Puerto Rico debt crisis. As a Puerto Rican living in Boston for the last couple of years, I've been way out of the loop about what's going on regarding anything involving the debt crisis. I have tried to keep up with what is going on, but not even the newspapers back home do a good job of informing the masses of the current state of the events. So thanks for making a podcast breaking down the issue that was clear, concise, and organized about the issue at hand. I do hope you make another episode following up on the issue during the coming weeks. Well, I can tell you that that's probably not necessary because that bill was passed into law with no changes. So there's really nothing else to report, unfortunately. Back to her note, she said, I would be interested to see how you break it down since you perfectly described how I feel about the whole issue, which is nothing less than spite and disappointment at the current leadership of this country. And people ask me why I'm a cynic. In any case, keep up the quality podcast. I can't say I've ever donated to a podcaster up to now. Thanks for your public service. You do a way better job than most reputable news sources that I know of, and keep it up, Jan. Thank you, Jan. You're very sweet. We got another $10 from my good friend Bud Johnson, and he said, Jen, get the agent. The rest will follow. You and Congressional Dish are critical. The small check is an extra. Love you, Bud. Thank you, Bud. And I am getting the agent, even though I know it's fiscally completely irresponsible, but I'm doing it. So thanks, Bud. And I'm definitely doing it with your help. So you're the best. And then we got another contribution, $5.24 from Bud Johnson. And he said, hey, Jen, CD127 was long but good. So you always rock, your friend, Bud. Thanks, buddy. We also got $5.15 from Laura Smith of Culver City, California. She said she wishes she could give more. Laura, I am thankful for you giving whatever you can. Thank you. We also got $5.15 from Elias Yiannopoulos, who is a subscriber. I'm positive that you are. Yeah, you totally are. So he gave an extra $5.15. That's fantastic. Thank you, bud. We also got $5 from Cosmo Guerreri, Emma Griffith, Tim Giblin, William Hawthorne, Zachary Milborn, and Michael Zachary of Chula Vista, California. Thank you to all of you. We also had some anonymous Bitcoin contributions, one worth $7.70, one worth $1, and one worth 98 cents. Thank you to everyone who is contributing in Bitcoin. Just so you know what I do with those, I let them sit in the account and I watch the value go up and down. So yeah, you guys are just adding to the pot. And if I need that money, I know it's there. So I appreciate everything you're contributing. I had to check out of this hotel room 5 minutes ago, so I am not packed and I am a slob. So I need to get to it before the maids come here and, I don't know, tell me to leave. Like, what is the consequence if I don't leave this hotel room right now? But yeah, I'm a rule follower. So I'm going to wrap up this podcast by appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you again for the awards nominations and for supporting this podcast and for giving me a life that I am absolutely obsessed with and so happy. So yeah, if you want to keep up Congressional Dish support, please go to congressionaldish.com. The support page is where you can do so. And I will talk to you. The next episode is about Netroots Nation. And I'm going to try to do some interviews with congressional staffers. That's why I'm going. I want to get them drunk and out of their element and ask them what the hell goes on. I don't know. I'm going to see what else happens. I don't know what the next episode is going to be. And so that should be fun for all of us. You know, just like Nicholas said, I think that some kind of activism is necessary. We have to do something about this situation. And the people at Netroots Nation, they're trying. You know, these are the people that are trying to change things. I'm going to look for good ideas. I'm going to talk to congressman staff, maybe some congressmen. We'll see. But yeah, I want to find some good ideas that we can rally around. So that's kind of my goal. But yeah, thanks for everything. I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
We're surrounded now by liars coming at us through our TV screens.
We don't have a domestic spying program.
They're content to fight in black and white despite the many in-betweens. We got a president who plays with the facts. And then he waves a flag to cover his tracks. As if a lie is alright if the end will justify the means.
The polar ice caps aren't going away.
We don't think we can deny it anymore. You can stick to your story if you think it flies, but we're not keeping quiet anymore. We are so damn tired of being lied to.
Government jobs consume the profits of the private sector.
We don't think we can deny it anymore. You can stick to your story if you think it flies, but we're not keeping quiet anymore. Now we're not keeping quiet.
These bills represent common sense, bipartisan solutions